Sebastian, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Thank you. Let me share the screen and I will use only 5 minutes, I promise. Okay, perfect. Okay, well, good morning, everybody. I appreciate and thank very much the invitation and the opportunity of participating in this meeting. And I am so sorry for not being there. I wish to be there, of course. Regarding the potential values of neuroscience in the analysis of well-being, there are different lines of research. Among them, I will refer only today to the studies of how poverty impacts neuroplasticity and the potentiality of neural changes through interventions. The available evidence in this field suggests that different indicators of poverty, we can discuss about that then, can change the volume, thickness, surface, connectivity, functional segregation, and activation of different neural networks involved in emotional and cognitive self-regulation, learning, and language throughout the whole cycle of life. Although initially this evidence was mainly interpreted in terms of a deficit, recent findings in the last 5 years also suggest that difference in SES can be associated with distinct types of neural resources, suggesting also adaptive mechanisms that are still being explored. The levels of variability of such associations have been also verified according to individual susceptibility. For example, when comparing vulnerable versus resilient children, adolescents, and adults in aspects such as time preference, reproductive decisions, and even hidden talents. Recently, some researchers have proposed the hypothesis that the impacts of deprivations can be not only structural and functional, but also in the pace of development, so that SES would be associated with an acceleration of cortical thinning and segregation of functional networks in children and adolescents at least. Another 2 important mechanisms that can affect the pace of neural development are the SES promotion of pro-inflammatory response, which can result in chronic and systemic inflammation, and what was mentioned earlier, the increasing of allostatic loads, which is an index of chronic physiological stress. Both mechanisms that are considered determinant factors for several chronic diseases which affect well-being and life expectancy are relatively invisible during the first stages of development. Regarding mediation and moderation mechanisms, the neuroscientific studies of poverty identified a diverse set of risk and protective factors at different levels of analysis, which modulates the associations between different SES components and neural structure and function. This means that it's important to distinguish between different dimensions of deprivation and threats because of their different potential effects on neural development. In general, if you ask me, how does it feel to be without a home, like a complete unknown, from a neural and cognitive point of view, I should answer, it feels like fatigue, illness, pain, lack of critical thinking, lack of control of one's daily life, and social alienation. The neuroscientific evidence of interventions for children and adolescents living in poverty shows that it is possible to change neural and immunological plasticity during the first decade of life through different intervention approaches, as for example, individual and group cognitive training, educational curriculum adaptations, and family emotional exchanges and communication. It's important to also consider in intervention efforts the power of the combination of these approaches with adequate physical activity, sleep, and nutrition, the 3 of which are already being approached with batches in many countries to prevent the impacts of poverty on brain structure, function, and development. Finally, I would like to highlight the importance of considering a relational developmental systems framework to consider the determinants of well-being, especially for multilateral framing purposes. The rationale of this proposal is that individual, social, and cultural determinants are complex and interconnected, and focusing only in the individual child or just in general indicators could mask important relational phenomena involved in the fulfilling of physiological needs. The influence of relational phenomena is multidirectional, is historical and culturally framed, and is not neutral in its dynamic operation and impacts. So integration should be more than a mere accumulation of indicators or dimensions. This means that we need to innovate in the identification of constellations of needs and solutions to avoid binary interpretations of the causes and impacts of poverty, and to avoid the reification of perceived biological differences at the population level. Maybe a potential avenue to explore this is the design of artificial intelligence algorithms aimed at targeting physiological aspects in SDGs components. Thank you very much.